The Sacred Silence. A Woman's Journey to Wholeness Introduction. The silence that speaks in. A world saturated with noise, social expectations, cultural demands, and the relentless pursuit of external validation. Silence is often misunderstood as absence, emptiness, or failure. For women, this misinterpretation is particularly acute. Societal narratives frequently equate a woman's worth with her ability to attract, nurture, or sustain relationships. Yet what if silence, far from being a void, is a sacred space where the soul begins to whisper? What if the decision to step away from the cycles of desire, superficial affection, and external validation is not a retreat, but a radical act of presence? This exploration delves into the transformative power of feminine silence, drawing on the psychological insights of Carl Jung, to illuminate how a woman's withdrawal from external distractions can catalyze a profound spiritual awakening. This journey, often mistaken for isolation or lack, is instead a reclamation of inner abundance, a transmutation of energy, and a path toward individuation, the process of becoming whole. This work expands on the original premise, offering a comprehensive examination of the psychological, spiritual, cultural dimensions of a woman's choice to embrace silence. Over the course of this exploration, we will consider the societal pressures that shape women's perceptions of their bodies and desires, the Jungian framework of the shadow and the anima, the stages of transformation that unfold in silence, and the emergence of the wild woman archetype, a symbol of untamed, authentic feminine power. Through a blend of psychological analysis, narrative reflection, and practical insights, this text seeks to honor the women who dare to listen to the soul's quiet call, offering a roadmap for those who feel the stirrings of this journey within themselves. Chapter 1. The Myth of Absence, the Cultural Narrative of Feminine Worth in Contemporary Society. Shortly, women are often taught that their value is contingent upon their visibility in the social and romantic spheres. From a young age, cultural messages emphasize the importance of being desired, chosen, or validated by others. Media portrayals, social norms, and even well-meaning advice from friends and family reinforce the idea that a woman's body must be active, engaged in relationships, pursuing affection, or fulfilling societal roles to be considered alive, relevant, or whole. Silence, in this context, is perceived as a failure. A woman who withdraws from romantic or sexual engagement is seen as incomplete, lonely, or deficient. This narrative is not merely a modern phenomenon. It is rooted in centuries of patriarchal conditioning that have defined women primarily through their relationships to others. The archetypes of the lover, the wife, the mother, or the muse dominate cultural storytelling, leaving little room for the woman who exists outside these roles. When a woman chooses consciously or unconsciously to step away from these expectations, she is often met with suspicion, pity, or outright dismissal. Society fears the woman who does not conform to its script, for she becomes unpredictable, untouchable, and in many ways ungovernable. Yet, this fear reveals a deeper truth. The woman who embraces silence is not absent. She is profoundly present. Her withdrawal from the external games of desire signals the beginning of an internal journey, one that challenges the very foundations of the cultural narratives that seek to define her. This journey is not about renouncing love or connection, but about redefining what it means to love and be connected first and foremost to oneself. The silence of the body is a portal, contrary to societal assumptions. The silence of the body is not a sign of emptiness, but a gateway to inner expansion. When a woman steps away from the pursuit of immediate pleasure or external validation, she creates space for something deeper to emerge. This space, often mistaken for lack, is a fertile ground where the soul begins to speak. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, would describe this process as the redirection of repressed energy. According to Jung, energy that is no longer expended on external distractions finds new pathways for expression, often manifesting as heightened intuition, vivid dreams, or a renewed sense of purpose. For many women, shift is accompanied by unexpected phenomena, a heightened sensitivity to their inner world, a resurgence of creativity or a deepening of spiritual awareness. These are not random occurrences, but signs of a calling, a summons to reconnect with the parts of the self that have been buried beneath layers of societal conditioning. The body, deprived of external touch, turns inward, inviting the woman to explore the long-forgotten territories of her psyche. This is not a retreat from life, but a courageous dive into its depths. The fear of the unseen society's discomfort with the silent woman stems from her unpredictability. A woman who no longer seeks validation through relationships or sexual engagement becomes a mystery not only to others, but often to herself. She is no longer easily categorized or controlled, and this makes her both powerful and threatening. Jung would argue that this power arises from her encounter with the shadow, the repressed aspects of the self that society has deemed unacceptable. By choosing silence, a woman begins to confront these hidden parts, integrating them into her consciousness and reclaiming her wholeness. This process is not without discomfort. The woman who withdraws may initially feel invisible, as if her absence from the social script has erased her existence. Friends and family may question her choices, urging her to get back out there or not isolate herself. Yet, what they perceive as isolation is, in truth, immersion, a deliberate turning inward to listen to the soul's quiet voice. This is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming one's true self by integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Chapter 2. The Jungian Framework. Shadow. Anima and individuation, the shadow and repressed energy, and Jungian psychology. The shadow represents the parts of the self that are hidden, repressed, or denied often, because they do not align with societal expectations or personal ideals. 4. Women, the shadow may include qualities such as anger, ambition, or independence, which are frequently discouraged in favor of more acceptable traits like nurturing or compliance. When a woman chooses silence, she creates the conditions for the shadow to emerge, demanding to be seen and integrated. Jung believed that all repressed energy seeks expression, and when it is denied, it manifests in unconscious ways, often as destructive patterns or externalized conflicts. For example, a woman who suppresses her need for self-expression in favor of pleasing others may find herself trapped in cycles of unfulfilling relationships or emotional exhaustion. By contrast, when she embraces silence, she allows this repressed energy to find a new form of expression, one that is more aligned with her authentic self. This process is not linear or comfortable. The emergence of the shadow can evoke feelings of unease, guilt, or fear, as the woman confronts aspects of herself she has long avoided. Yet, it is precisely this confrontation that sets the stage for transformation. By acknowledging and integrating her shadow, she begins to free herself from the unconscious patterns that have kept her bound to external validation. The anima, the bridge to the unconscious central to Jung's psychology, is the concept of the anima, the feminine archetype that resides in the unconscious of every individual, regardless of gender. For women, the anima represents the bridge between the conscious ego and the deeper layers of the psyche, including the collective unconscious reservoir of universal symbols and archetypes shared by all humanity. When a woman withdraws from external distractions, she begins to engage with her anima, entering into a dialogue with the archetypal feminine that has been suppressed by centuries of cultural conditioning. The anima is often associated with qualities such as intuition, creativity, and emotional depth, qualities that are frequently undervalued in a world that prioritizes logic and productivity. By turning inward, a woman reconnects with these qualities, allowing them to guide her toward a deeper understanding of herself and her place in the world. This reconnection is not a passive process. It requires courage, patience, and a willingness to sit with discomfort as the anima reveals truths that may challenge long-held beliefs. Individuation is a path to wholeness at its core. Chapter 3. The stages of transformation. Stage 1. The call to silence. The journey begins with a subtle, often unconscious call to withdraw. This call may manifest as a sense of exhaustion with the external world, weariness with relationships that feel shallow, desires that leave her unfulfilled, or expectations that no longer resonate. For some women, this call is triggered by a specific event: a breakup, a betrayal, or a moment of profound disillusionment. For others, it is a gradual realization that the life she has been living no longer aligns with her deepest truth. At this stage, the woman may not fully understand why she feels compelled to retreat. She may question her sanity, fearing that she is wasting time or missing out on opportunities for love and connection. Society reinforces these doubts, reminding her that her worth is tied to her ability to remain active in the social and romantic spheres. Yet, beneath these doubts lies a deeper truth. The call to silence is not a punishment, but an invitation to begin a new chapter of self-discovery. Stage 2. The descent into discomfort. As the woman embraces silence, she enters a period of profound discomfort. The absence of external distractions forces her to confront the parts of herself she has long avoided: her fears, her insecurities, her unhealed wounds. This stage is often marked by a sense of invisibility, as if her withdrawal from the social script has rendered her irrelevant. Friends and family may misinterpret her silence as isolation, urging her to move on or get back out there. Yet, what they perceive as withdrawal is, in fact, a deep immersion into the self. Jung would describe this stage as the encounter with the shadow, the repressed aspects of the psyche that demand to be seen. The woman may grapple with feelings of guilt, shame, or self-doubt as she confronts the ways in which she has adapted to societal expectations at the expense of her own authenticity. Old patterns may resurface, tempting her to return to familiar but unfulfilling relationships. This is a symbolic journey that requires her to trust the process, even when it feels like punishment. Stage 3. The emergence of the soul's voice. As the woman persists through the discomfort, something remarkable begins to happen. The silence of the body gives way to the voice of the soul. This voice is not loud or demanding. It is subtle, persistent, and deeply wise. It speaks through dreams, intuitions, and moments of unexpected clarity, guiding the woman toward a deeper understanding of herself. She begins to see her past relationships, her emotional patterns, and her societal roles in a new light, not as failures, but as clues to a greater story. At this stage, the woman discovers that her worth is not contingent upon external validation. She no longer needs to be chosen by others to feel alive. She chooses herself. This shift is both liberating and terrifying, as it requires her to let go of the familiar roles and identities that once defined her. Yet it is also the moment when she begins to reclaim her power, stepping into a new state of consciousness where she is no longer governed by the need for approval. Stage 4. The birth of the wild woman. From the depths of silence emerges the archetype of the wild woman, a symbol of untamed, authentic feminine power. This archetype, described by Jungian scholars like Clarissa Pinkola Estes, represents the woman who is connected to her instincts, her intuition, and her ancestral wisdom. She is no longer bound by the need to please others or conform to societal expectations. She is free to be herself, fully and unapologetically. The wild woman is not reckless or destructive. She is discerning, intentional, and deeply rooted in her own truth. She loves from a place of abundance rather than lack, choosing relationships that honor her wholeness rather than complete it. Her presence is both a gift and a challenge to the world around her. She embodies a power that cannot be manipulated or controlled. Stage 5. The integration of wholeness. The final stage of the journey is one of integration, where the woman fully embodies the lessons of her silence. She has reconciled her shadow, engaged with her anima, and embraced her wild woman archetype. Her body, once quiet, now pulses with a new frequency, one that is subtler, deeper, and truer. She no longer seeks to fill an emptiness, for she has made lack her home, transforming it into an altar of self-awareness. In this state, the woman is no longer waiting to be rescued or completed by another. She has rescued herself, and this self-rescue changes everything. Her relationships, when she chooses to engage in them, are no longer driven by need, but by discernment. Her love is an overflow of her inner abundance, not a desperate attempt to fill a void. She becomes a beacon for others, illuminating the path to wholeness, not by leading the way, but by embodying it. Asterisk. Chapter 4. The cultural and spiritual implications. The fear of the whole woman, the woman who has crossed through silence, is both a mystery and a threat to a world that thrives on fragmentation. Her wholeness challenges the systems that depend on women's compliance, insecurity, or dependence. She is no longer available for relationships that diminish her, nor is she willing to trade her essence for fleeting moments of connection. This makes her dangerous not because she seeks to harm, but because she refuses to live half alive. This fear of the whole woman is not new. Throughout history, women who have embraced their inner power, whether through spiritual practices, creative expression, or radical self-acceptance, have been marginalized, misunderstood, or vilified. Yet it is precisely this power that holds the potential to transform not only the individual woman, but also the collective consciousness. The spiritual dimension of silence from a spiritual perspective. The silence of the body is a sacred ritual, a communion with the divine feminine that resides within every woman. This communion is not about renouncing the physical world, but about reorienting it toward a higher purpose. The woman who embraces silence is not rejecting desire, she's transmuting it, channeling it into a deeper connection with herself and the universe. This spiritual dimension is reflected in the experiences of women across cultures and traditions, who have found liberation through periods of withdrawal. From the ascetic practices of female mystics to the vision quests of indigenous women, silence has long been recognized as a pathway to divine insight. In the modern world, this pathway is often obscured by the noise of consumerism, technology, and social expectations, but it remains accessible to those who dare to listen. The collective call to awakening the journey of silence is not just a personal one. It is a collective calling. Every woman who chooses to listen to her soul's whisper becomes a beacon for others, reminding them that they too can reclaim their wholeness. This collective awakening has the potential to shift cultural paradigms, challenging the systems that thrive on women's fragmentation and distempo. By sharing her story, whether through words, art, or simply her presence, the transformed woman becomes a catalyst for change. She does not seek to lead others, but to light the fire within them, encouraging them to embrace their own silence and discover the wisdom that lies within. Chapter 5. Practical reflections for the journey, honoring the call to silence for women who feel the stirrings of this journey. The first step is to honor the call to silence without judgment or fear. This may involve setting boundaries, creating space for solitude, or simply allowing oneself to feel the discomfort of withdrawal. Journaling, meditation, or creative expression can be powerful tools for processing the emotions that arise during this time. Navigating the discomfort of silence is an inevitable part of the journey, but it is also a sign of growth. Women can support themselves through this stage by cultivating self-compassion, seeking out supportive communities, or working with a therapist or spiritual guide who understands the process of individuation. It is also important to resist the temptation to return to old patterns, trusting that the discomfort is temporary and transformative. Listening to the soul's voices, the soul begins to speak. Women can deepen their connection to it through practices that foster inner awareness. Dream journaling, for example, can help uncover the messages of the unconscious, while mindfulness meditation can cultivate a sense of presence and clarity. Engaging with art, music, or nature can also provide a pathway to the soul's wisdom, embodying the wild woman. The emergence of the wild woman archetype is a call to live authentically and unapologetically. This may involve redefining relationships, pursuing creative passions, or